All right, welcome to our virtual Ask a Coach night at Scheels. We are here with Zack Allison and Kristen Arnold, Source Endurance, and we are going to talk about training and nutrition this evening. So first things first, what does it even take to be a coach? We're talking school, real world experience. What does it take? What makes you two coaches?
I think that a coach has to be a people person. You have to care about other people's results. You have to actually care. But on top of that, you should be educated. So at Source Endurance, we definitely, our motto is the science of results, and we have a minimum bachelor's degree in some form of physiology or nutrition to be a coach at Source Endurance specifically. But the barrier to entry is pretty low for coaching. So kind of everyone's has a friend that's a coach, and you just do the USAC, level 3 exam. So there's a low barrier to entry, but to be a good coach, I think education and ability to work with people.
Kristen, anything to add?
I think Zach did a pretty good job. Like he said, anyone technically can be a coach, but USA Cycling has a license that allows coaches to get more expertise, more continuing education, be up in the know about the current research available, and those are all very important things when assessing what kind of coach you want.
So for you specifically, Kristen, what do you love about being a coach, and what do you think makes you a better coach?
I really love being part of people's successes. So helping them grow as people and doing that through sport, I think, is a really powerful strategy to empowering people in general in other parts of their life. And the second part was, what do you
feel makes you the best coach?
The best coach. I mean, I do have a master's of science degree, and I have a bachelor's in human nutrition, so I have the biology and the physiology background. I've been racing for a long time, and I've participated in a lot of different types of coaching opportunities, so group coaching, in person, online. So my ability to communicate with people in person and also virtually, I think, allows me to connect to my athletes.
Awesome. And what about you, Zach? What do you think enhances your ability to be a really great coach?
I think a lot of my clientele are domestic, and I've pretty much done every domestic race to a certain level and degree over the last 15 years. So when I have a client come on that wants to get their Cat 1 upgrade, and they are on a team and they're going to North Star or Twin Cities Crit or something in Florida or something in SoCal or all these different races, it's wow, I've happened to have done that once or twice, so I have a little bit more practical knowledge. But then on top of that, I think we should mention that between Training Peaks and today's plan and all the advanced physiology tools that we have, that's a big part of cycling coaching that other sports don't have. So if you're coaching swimming or some of these other coaching things where you're coaching form or something like that, we actually have Training Peaks, and we track wattage data and heart rate data, and we have a little bit more data at our disposal as coaches. So getting those Training Peak certifications and sort of all that combined is what makes a whole coaching package.
Now, Zach, I do have to mention that Sovereign Cyclist says it's the hair.
It's the hair?
It's the hair.
Yeah.
It's the hair.
You're talking about Kristen's hair, right? I have a normal haircut.
I mean, I think you both have fantastic hair.
Thanks.
All right, so here's our first question that has been submitted. How do I know if I'm going out too hard for a long gravel event?
I think you can gauge your effort. You should have a pacing chart. So work with your coach, make a pacing chart. So that'll be the first red flag, is if this is your pacing chart and you're 10 or 15% beyond the pacing chart, that's probably a good sign, even if you feel great in that moment. But judge your pacing by if you're going to crack and make if the last third is going to be shorter. Or if the last third is going to be way longer because you're cracked because you overpaced the first bit. So a practical example is I raced desert gravel in Fruta, Cotuit last weekend, and there was Matt Akers, a guy there that is wicked fast over anything from 200 to 400 miles. I just found out, and so we were a little bit. I was personally overpaced for the first bit, but it didn't cause me to be completely underpaced. Even though I did crack, it was only in the last 20 miles, and there was way more downhill. So it made it smarter for me to stay with him for the first 2/3, and then die a slow death the last third, but not necessarily go slow over the whole course. So if someone is to stay with that group for 50 miles and then blow up, and then you have, it's a 180-mile race, so then you have, what's the math on that? Then you have another 100 miles to go, and you're cracked for 100 miles, then the whole course for you is going to be slower because you were overpaced for a short time at the beginning. So that for me is a big teller, is if you're going to go slower after you crack from going out too hard, like you can judge that pace by having a wattage sheet, heart rate sheet, and kind of not trying to overpace the first bit.
Anything to add, Kristen?
The only thing I would add is just to practice. So if you expect your time for the FoCo Fondo to be 3.5 hours, then work up in training to 3.5 hours, and do a really hard ride that's near that amount, and see how you feel. So that is how you know subjectively for you what pace is going to work best for you, by doing that in practice and training.
So would you say this is both listening to your body during training to know how it operates during different phases of your training, doing a similar type thing? Is it also looking at stats and understanding how you're training?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely depends on what you have accessible to you as far as data. So if you have a power meter and you train on the same bike that you're going to be racing the FoCo Fondo on, then you really have a lot of tools at your disposal, and if you have a coach to make a really detailed plan and know what your limits are going to be in the first half versus the second half. And fueling is also a really big part of pacing, because if you're not fueled well, you're going to, in the first half, even if you're under paced, you're still not going to feel well in the second half, regardless of how fast you're going.
Another thing that can help with pacing that takes the guesswork out of it is actually seeing the profile. So we can go take a look at head units really quick, where we can kind of show you what the profiles look like.
And while we're over there, this is the only gravel bike at Scheels right now. Low inventory, but more will be coming in soon. You can also find tires here, bar tape, all of those other necessities for the bike you do have. All right, Zach, show us what we have here.
So these are obviously just stock images, but if this is a climb in a race course, then it is really great for pacing to be able to see where you are and how hard you're going, and see where you are on the course. And you can actually see how long the actual climb is. So this might be one climb in an entire race, but if you can use your map and zoom in and zoom out and say like, okay, I can go pretty hard at the beginning because all the climbing's at the beginning, but you have to go easier at the end if there's a massive climb at the end. Then you can actually you can see the whole profile, and then see your average power and average intensity factor. So that's power based on what your ability is, and actually use your computer to pace it, not blow up.
So here at Scheels, we have some Garmin products, also have some Wahoo products over here. If anyone is interested, I know these are also going quickly, so if you're interested in getting one to train with before the Fondo, sooner is better than later. So speaking of the Fondo, if we're taking that as an example, how would a participant work up to a 50-mile ride? How would they train for that?
Depends on where you start. So if you're new, if you just got a brand new gravel bike, you're new to cycling, you want to start at what's approachable. So maybe you ride 2 times a week, you want to work up to 3 to 4 to 5. How many weeks out are we now?
From FoCo Fondo?
Yes.
It's on July 25th, so a number of weeks.
About 8 weeks.
8 weeks. So 8 weeks is plenty of time to get ready for a 50-mile ride. And like I said, figure out average speed you go in your rides and how long you think that 50-mile ride will be, and make sure you do at least 1, probably 2 or 3 rides that will be that amount of time.
That's really, really good advice. Okay, so what if I'm coming to this event, I'm not living at altitude, this event is at altitude, how do I prepare for that?
So if you don't live at altitude and you're coming to Fort Collins to race FoCo Fondo, heat training is a really great adaptation that can kind of mimic an altitude effect. So when you are heat acclimated, you have more blood volume, you have a higher ability to sweat, and in turn you can slightly raise your absolute amount of hematocrit, or how much oxygen you can move in your blood. So that's just going to help you in an altitude event. You're not actually going to acclimate to altitude. Luckily, Fort Collins is only around 5,000 feet. The course goes up to about 6, so it's not like we're sending you up to 10,000 feet.
Not in this event anyway, right?
Yeah, not in this event. So if you live somewhere like on the plains, the likelihood of it being in a hotter place in July is really high. So like, read a lot about heat acclimation. Source Endurance actually has a couple webinars coming up on heat acclimation. FoCo Fondo has an entire packet that has a lot of heat acclimation stuff in it. If you're not from altitude, that can really help. And then there's a couple other Source Endurance webinars coming up on pacing and heat acclimation and all that stuff.
Okay, that is really helpful. So we're talking about heat acclimation to get ready. What about fueling your body? We do have this question that was submitted. Should you fuel your body for less intense rides the same way you do for more intense rides? What's a good strategy to follow? What about carbs specifically? Sounds like a Kristen question.
Yes, that's a really good question, and it depends on what the training ride is going to look like. So anything under 90 minutes, you can fuel kind of as needed. You don't need to necessarily take in carbohydrates or fluids during that time. It may be helpful, but it's not going to be necessary. So anything over an hour and a half, that's when it's required for you to fuel in order to make it through the whole training ride. And we can go over to the nutrition products here at Scheels.
So the nutrition wall is super convenient right when you walk in at the bike service entrance. All the good stuff.
It is important to fuel differently for low intensity versus high intensity rides, but it also depends on more importantly, how long the ride is going to be. So the longer the ride is, the more important it is to fuel consistently and also at a higher level. You can go by carbohydrates, which is what the question asked. Do about 30 to 45 grams of carb per hour. And a higher intensity ride would be 45 to 90 grams of carb per hour. So let's say we're doing like a 2-hour low intensity ride. We could do 2 packets of drink mix. These are about 20 grams of carb per bottle. So that's 40 grams, and then since it's a lower intensity ride, we could do a bar, something that you'll be able to actually digest because it's lower intensity. So you could do 1 pro bar, and that would be enough to get you through that. On the FoCo Fondo, they'll have NBS nutrition, which is about the equivalent of 2 of these per bottle. I'm a big fan of drink mixes that have more calories and more carbohydrates, so you don't have to think about drinking and eating as much. You can just do it fluently. So
That is a really, really good tip. Do you have any favorite products over here on this wall that you would recommend? What are some of your faves?
Honestly, none of these I would tell you not to have, so I don't say that all the time. Like I said, it kind of depends on what type of ride you're doing. So you could do like the Pro Bar meal bars for like lower intensity rides or really long rides, and then as you get to higher intensity, you want to do things more like the gels or the blocks, or I did see gels somewhere also, or gels. So it kind of depends on what works for you and what works good for your gut.
Oh, that's good to know. Well, speaking of nutrition, what is your advice for a time-crunched athlete?
I definitely recommend meal prepping. So making a meal plan at the beginning of the week of what you're going to eat, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, and just getting everything ready. So then you don't really have to think about it. So if you're really time-crunched, planning is really important.
So planning is great, knowing that you have to get it together, but that can also be really overwhelming when it comes to figuring out, what do I plan? I know the meals I need to plan for, but what exactly do I need for my body specifically? What advice or suggestions do you have for figuring that part out?
Yeah, figuring out specifics at that point, I would suggest hiring a registered dietitian, working with somebody that can help you identify what are your areas for improvement, what are you already doing well, and what do you need specifically to fuel for your training, and then also within your lifestyle, if you have kids or a job, how to manage all that.
That's very specific person to person.
Yes.
So we also have another specific question here. Do you have tips for people struggling with IBS and writing?
I do have a lot of clients that struggle with IBS, and they are from recreational to professional athletes, so it affects people across the spectrum. And again, IBS is very personal, so it is recommended to hire a professional registered dietitian, ideally somebody that has experience in sports nutrition and also gut issues, to help identify what the trigger foods are that are causing the symptoms, potentially finding strategies of timing of when they can have certain foods and when they can't, and then knowing like what foods need to be limited.
No, that's really, really helpful. All right, I'm gonna bring Zack back over here. We have a fun question for both of you. These are both submitted questions. So first, we're going to start with Zack. We've heard of workouts, we've done workouts, but we've also seen this video of you doing some chore-couts. So a chore workout, I think. When can we expect more videos of your chore-couts?
We can make another video. I think the funniest part was subjecting Kristen to the workout video, especially the lawnmower rope pull. That was probably my second favorite one. Been doing a lot of work on the truck lately, so my triceps are really strong from the old jack press. Real solid tricep workout, so I'll submit that workout video directly to AJ first for people.
I think we might need to repost that video so everyone can enjoy that this upcoming Memorial Day weekend. Little entertainment. All right, and Kristen, for you, this submitted question: how can Sam Rosenholtz fix his god-awful climbing? I'm so sorry, Sam.
Sam, very close friend of mine. Just keep being the best Sam he can be. He'll be great.
That is a very general, very vague answer, but we're going to take it. All right, so as we wrap up things here, just a reminder, gravel inventory. We're still waiting on more bikes. It's low, but check out these sweet cycling socks. So these cycling socks from Scheels can be yours for free if you stop by here anytime between now and next Friday. Mention the FoCo Fondo or Ask a Coach Night to get a free pair of cycling socks. So just hop on over to the service desk here. Oh, and we have a last minute question. All right, gravel races always start super early or have huge mass starts. Any tips for how to deal with race day? I'm really bad at eating at 4 a.m. Eating at 4 a.m., I'm bad at waking up at 4 a.m.
I'll take this one. So my preference at Unbound is, because I think it starts at 5 or 6, is to not wake up. And then by the time you get to 8-1, you're 50 miles in, and there's only a 150-mile race, and you wake up at 8-1, and then boom, it's 10 a.m., and normal wake-up time for your circadian rhythm. So you do have to eat. So I think, unfortunately, waking up a little earlier than you want to, or than you, like, some people will wake up, go straight to the start line. If you give yourself a little bit more time, then you can kind of just take longer to eat. But if you had a really good dinner and you eat something in the morning, you don't need to eat like a massive meal in the morning, as long as you have a solid nutrition plan and you're eating along the way. I've had issues trying to shove down a bunch of food in the morning, knowing that it's a massive event, and then my stomach's upset, and that's worse in a lot of ways than eating a little bit less and then making sure that my nutrition's out on the bike. So don't force yourself to wake up. Don't get up 5 hours before the start. Like, it's early for everyone. Some people are just better with it. But then when you finish at like between 4 and 8 p.m. Like if you're a night owl, then like you're peaking right then. So maybe change your pacing a little bit to be faster when you're awake.
Is this also something you would suggest practicing during training?
As a not morning person, Kristen saying yes, like
Everyone does things differently, right?
So it wouldn't be very effective because I just wouldn't do it. But I mean, yeah, practicing everything. I think in that case, having events that you're doing before Unbound is really key. That's the practice. You don't necessarily need to like wake up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday and try and eat 2,000 calories of pancakes to like train yourself to eat in the morning. But having some shakedown rides and run-in events are going to be really great.
That's a great personal experience. What about you, Kristen? Any other suggestions or thoughts?
A lot of people wake up really early, so Zach is a specific lifestyle. I would say at least once doing a ride that will start at the time that the FoCo Fondo will start is going to be important. And trying to figure out what foods sound good at that time. You're like, oh, I could probably eat a banana, but like I'm definitely not getting a bagel down. Liquid calories can be really helpful, so making a smoothie, drinking calories is a lot of the time a lot easier than trying to like eat a dry sandwich in the morning. So if the issue is getting enough down, then definitely doing a smoothie or something like that. You do need to get some foods down in the morning, but just like Zach said, don't force it, but you do need to practice. And at some point you actually need to train your body to take those calories in early. It's not something that's intuitive to really anybody.
Well, that's good advice. All right, as we wrap things up, again, unless we have any other last minute questions, any final advice you have from a training or nutrition perspective that we haven't addressed today?
I did want to mention we have this service called the Race Day Nutrition Plan at Source Endurance, and what it is, it's a PDF file and it's custom to you, and it tells you exactly how much and what to eat and drink along the ride. So I'll have a course profile of the ride that you're doing, and then based on what your personal needs are and your pacing strategy, I'll have tips and exactly what to eat and drink. And then it also comes with a top tube sticker that you can actually put on your bike, so it tells you exactly when and what to eat and drink along the ride. It's all right there.
That is super helpful. Sometimes I love when someone just tells me exactly what to do and I don't have to think about it. No guesswork.
Exactly.
All right, Zach, anything else from you before we sign off?
If you're a FoCo Fondo athlete and you're doing FoCo Fondo specifically, and that's kind of why you're here, but maybe a coach is out of reach for pricing or something like that, we have put together a massive packet with FoCo Fondo and Source Endurance for everything training for FoCo Fondo, for heat acclimation. It's really well priced, and it has probably 10 times as much information as we went over here today. So just check that out. Let us know if you have any questions on that. All of our contact information's on that. So that's really a foot in the door of like learning everything you have to do to train for and be successful at FoCo Fondo.
And where's the best place to find this resource?
FoCoFondo.com. Bike Rank, also on Bike Rank.
Excellent. All right. Thank you both for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us tonight. And everyone, you will see Zach and Kristen at the event FoCo Fondo. And can we see those socks again, Zach? All right, signing off. For free. Who doesn't love free? Just come visit Scheels and ask for these free socks at this service desk. Mention FoCo Fondo or this night. All right, thanks everyone.